Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to our first weekly live newscast. It's been a long time since we've done a live, and we're actually going to add this as a new format for a while and see how it goes. So, we'll be going live Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time every week, and our goal is to bring you all of the AI breakthrough news from the week, but more importantly, give you context. We always try to do two things that are very, very important. First, give you context to the news about AI. What does it mean for you, for all of humans, and for society? And the second thing is to talk about options that you will have in the future to prepare yourself for an AI safe job future because a lot of different jobs are going to go away as a result of AI in the next 3 years. It's really going to start by 2025. It'll be at full steam. And we're going to talk a lot about how to prepare yourself and what fields are going to emerge for you to pivot in your career and do something different. And it's true, there will be a lot of new job creation as well as jobs being lost because that's the way every revolution has worked going back to the start of the Industrial Revolution. So there will be new jobs, new opportunities, but you have to be prepared and get yourself ready for them. So we got a lot of ground to cover today because this is the first one, and there's been a lot of stuff that's happened very recently. And let's get right into it. And the first we're going to talk about is self driving. But we're going to talk about it in a very broad way because there's many, many different aspects to self-driving. And the first piece of self-driving we're going to talk about is self-driving on another planet. So NASA put out an article this week on their website that was very, very interesting. And it talked about how their new rover, the Perseverance rover, uses autonomous self-driving more than previous rovers and will be able to travel much further distances than the previous rovers could, not only in single drives, but cumulatively. So self-driving is something that is going to take over transportation broadly, and not just here, but even on the moon, on Mars, and later, probably the moons of Saturn and other places. We won't talk about that today, but let's talk about this article for just a minute. So, the system that they use is called AutoNav, and it's an evolution of a previous system that they used for the Spirit and Opportunity rovers that were launched very close together, probably 15 years ago, and Curiosity, which has been on the ground now about 10 years. So, what is different, as they put it, the new AutoNav system allows the Perseverance rover to think while driving. So, what does that mean? Well, it means a couple of things. First of all, it means a more powerful processor, right? Because to be able to execute self driving takes much more powerful chips, and we've talked about it. The Perseverance rover cost about 1 billion, that's billion dollars to build. So they have to be careful with it, even though it has AutoNav, right? They can't do things that will put the rover in jeopardy because how are you going to fix a problem with a rover that's hundreds of millions of miles away from you? Pretty difficult, right? So, however, AutoNav, what it allows to do is Perseverance has not only a better chip, but better sensors, better cameras. And the combination of those better sensors and better cameras allows much better and faster image processing, which facilitates the autonomous driving, thinking while driving. Because with the prior rovers, even though technically they were self driving, what happened was they had to spend sometimes days hand coding algorithms that they would transmit to the rover, and then the rover would execute it. So was it self-driving? Yes, but it was manual self-driving, if you will. And this is different because there's about, I believe, 15 minutes round trip signal time between Earth and Mars, right? So you can't issue a command and have it executed quickly. So thinking while driving allows the rover to keep moving while avoiding obstacles, which is principally rocks and sand, deep sand on Mars. So that's the first piece of self-driving, straight from NASA, cutting edge, of course, and there's a lot more to it. So the next thing is, as we've talked about, sorry, I'm pulling the right notes here. There's a lot of different aspects that are required for self-driving as it's envisioned. So self-driving as it's envisioned is not gas powered. It's not. Why? Because how does a self-driving car that's fully autonomous take itself to a gas station and fill up with gas? The self-driving future is electric. That is one of the reasons, and perhaps one of two principal reasons, that the auto fleets are going electric. The other is pollution mitigation, of course, with vehicles being one of the very largest emitters of pollutions if you take all the vehicles all over the planet. So if the fleet of the future for self-driving driven by AI must be electric, then again, there's a lot of things that have to go into that. And we've talked about some of them over many different episodes over the last 2 years. And happy anniversary to all of my subscribers. We just hit 2 years. So thank you very, very much for staying tuned and continuing to watch and continuing to keep in mind what the future is bringing. So part of that is distributed generation and distribution of electricity. Right now, the electric grid is top down. You have a few very, very large generation plants and then massive grids that cover very large areas that send power out over many states, hundreds of thousands of cities, and millions of homes and businesses. That is not the easiest system to maintain because, as we know from the past, one major failure at a critical point can shut the whole system down and put an entire part of the country here in the US, and what I'm saying applies globally, out of power. Think Texas a year ago, February. So, so it's really critical that over time the structure of the grid changes, and this is very important to support autonomous driving and an all-electric fleet. And we're going to talk about the reason why right now. So there's two things going on in the auto industry itself, not the power industry, that are being done to facilitate the all-electric fleet, which again is being done to facilitate self-driving and, of course, pollution mitigation, climate change. So the first thing is that more than 50 U.S. power companies are partnering together to build a coast-to-coast charging networks for EVs by the end of 2023. So everyone's seen the Tesla charging stations, but they are Tesla specific. You've got GM, Ford, Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, BMW, Mercedes, every manufacturer is going electric. And so this is a massive project to build out charging stations for an all-electric fleet that's hundreds of millions of vehicles in the aggregate globally. These are huge numbers, but here in the US alone, the reason they partnered together is because they have to build 500,000 charging stations by 2030 to facilitate fleet electrification. So no one company can do that alone. And a bunch of the money to kickstart this, in addition to the power companies contributing to this, is the massive infrastructure bill that was passed by the government here in the US. But European governments are doing this, Asian governments are doing this. So it is going to be globally modeled and distributed. So this is billions and billions and billions of dollars. So 5 billion from the infrastructure bill is going to the states for EV chargers, and then the bigger infrastructure system in the U.S. has another 2.5 billion going to it. So that's $7.5 billion. And this consortium involves 52 electric companies in 31 states in the District of Columbia. So this is major, and the electric companies are contributing another $3 billion. So that's over 10 billion of investment. These are huge numbers, and this is a huge, huge change. In fact, I was out with my daughter this weekend, and we went by a closed gas station. I said to her, in the next few years, you're going to see a wave of gas stations starting to close. Why? Because there are too many for this electric future. And I'm going to talk a lot more about U.S. fleet electric vehicles rolling out very quickly. Same goes everywhere, of course. Thank you to my global audience. But that's big, big news. So how do you do it? Well, part of it is that many, many states, New York being one, and I picked them because they have a part of the government of New York called NYSERDA. California has one. Many of the states have one. But I picked one of the big states because it's very well developed. NYSERDA has existed for 40 years plus. And what does NYSERDA do? NYSERDA promotes energy efficiency in homes and businesses, but now they're part of this spreading of electrification for the vehicle market. So NYSERDA has 30 plus projects going right now that will generate 10 million of first year savings and 5 million of annual savings. So all of the governments have to be in this. And for EV infrastructure specifically, they're putting up a bunch of self-chargers all around New York. What does this do, by the way? NYSERDA's programs helps create 400,000 jobs in New York alone. So this is not just government spending. This is that's wasteful or anything like that. Governments must participate in a massive societal change to make it happen. It's the only way it can happen. It cannot be all private. It has to be public and private partnership. Just like you see NASA funding rocket companies like SpaceX, like Blue Origin, like Firefly, like others to build rocket systems. There's a bunch of other rockets being built right now with NASA funding. But the purpose of all this is to build a competitive landscape to facilitate future technologies. And so these electric groups that are part of state government are also doing it. But there's a whole other component to this. So as fleets go electric, most major car companies here in the US only have a couple of electric models today, like two. 3. By by a couple of years from now, they're going to have 30. So what does that mean? You're going to need a shitload of electric batteries to drive cars, right? So what does that mean? That means that in addition to all the new auto plants being built that are being built specifically to build electric vehicles, right next to it is being built a huge battery plant. So a perfect example of this is outside of Memphis, Tennessee. Ford is building a massive new facility for their F-150 electric truck program. Why? Because the F-150 is the biggest selling pickup truck in the U.S. So this is a major program change. And right next to it, they have partnered with a South Korean company to build a massive, massive battery factory. And it's not just Ford and one-off. Major vehicle manufacturers are spending heavily on EV battery moves. These include GM's investment with a Korean steelmaker POSCO in a new North American factory to make the materials that are subcomponents of these batteries. There's a whole other reason for doing it, and that's because the automakers learned the hard way with chips during COVID that they need to bring production capacity back local instead of relying on a supply chain halfway around the world that has been repeatedly shut down. In fact, Shenzhen is shut down again right now. So this hurts these global companies. So they are reshoring or onshoring again a lot of their production capacity. Toyota is doing the same thing. They're building a 1.3 billion battery factory in North Carolina, and Nissan is doing the same thing. So all of the majors are going all in on battery components and battery factories that will be adjacent to and in tandem with these new plants being built to build their electric fleets. And by the way, some of the old factories, like for GM, are being completely refurbished to build all electric. Lordstown, Ohio is a perfect example of that. Even Tesla. Tesla is now building electronic components for its superchargers and inverters for some of its batteries in Buffalo, New York. Uh, Tesla, that was originally supposed to be a solar power plant, which Tesla has struggled in solar power with Solar City that they bought. So they've converted a lot of the Buffalo plant over to support their EV efforts. So these are big changes that have been made very, very recently. And the purpose of these changes is to start building the massive infrastructure that will support an all electric fleet. And that's why you will see gas stations starting to close over the next few years. And between 2025 and 2030, the majority of gas stations will close. This doesn't mean that cars won't still need service. They will. They'll still need tires. They'll still need wheel bearings. They'll still have to have. There's a whole ecosystem of battery swapping that has to be built because that'll be absolutely required, right? Batteries wear out over time, just like the one in your cell phone, right? Over time, this battery degrades and you have to replace it or get a new phone. It's the same with a battery in a car. So there's going to be battery swapping centers built all over the US. Those will probably replace a lot of the gas stations. So we've already talked about space, where self-driving is really advancing. And we've talked about how the US ecosystem is morphing to self-driving, but first there has to be conversion to electric vehicles and all of the infrastructure around that has to be built. So it's tens or hundreds of billions of dollars of investment to make this change. Um, Now, I did a short that I just posted most recently on self-driving here in the US. And I've already talked about on other videos how level 4 autonomy has been approved by the government of Germany for freeways. That means that the driver never has to assume control of the vehicle. There's still a steering wheel in the car, there's still the pedals and everything, but the driver with level 4 autonomy never has to intercede theoretically. You can read, you can do whatever you want. But there's ads right now on TV here in the US for GMC pickup trucks that show them clapping their hands and rocking out to Queen and not driving. This is going to be every single vehicle very, very soon. Right now, though, still keep in mind this is only on interstates slash freeways, depending on what part of the country you're from. Same in Germany or divided highways. So local streets, not there for autonomy yet. That's level, that's needs further enhancement of chips, algorithms, and sensors. But it's way in motion, and I've done a lot of videos on that recently. See the two-part self-driving one, so I'm going to skip that. But in addition to space, and in addition to cars, and I've talked about trucks many, many times, self-driving trucks already on the road at level 3 autonomy on the freeways, rolling out in mass now. Still a human safety driver, but not for long. Give it 1 to 2 years, and the human safety drivers for that portion of the trip will be gone. But it's also going to affect aviation. So Saab makes cars, right? They don't sell them here in the US anymore, but they also make airplanes. And they started building a factory in 2020 that has since been completed to build a plane for the US Air Force. So this factory is here in the United States. It's the T-7A Red Hawk trainer, and it trains people to fly jets, new people in the Air Force. But in addition, what are they doing at this factory that they built? The factory also supports R&D, research and development in autonomy, artificial intelligence, and advanced manufacturing. We're going to talk about advanced manufacturing next. But all this goes to show where things really are. So self-driving is starting to penetrate everything. It's starting to penetrate passenger vehicles. It's starting to penetrate delivery trucks and big rigs. It is even advancing even further on Mars. So I have been saying consistently since 2 years ago that the self-driving revolution will be here by 2025. And luckily, it appears that my prediction is going to come true. And even in aviation, they're testing right now, as I've talked about on other videos, fully both piloted and fully autonomous short urban air mobility vehicles that will take people short distances from point to point. And the first place is in Florida. They're building out 4 airports for these UAVs, and the FAA is in final rulemaking to release the rules to allow these vehicles to become active in the airspace, because the airspace is government controlled, so they have to make sure it's safe and it's going to integrate with the existing traffic in the airspace, private pilots, commercial airlines, all that stuff. But it's coming by 2025. So what does this all mean? This means that you really got to think about what you're doing if you're doing a career that involves driving for a living. And the time to start learning is now. That's why we've started to develop resources here at the AI Guide to help you. And those resources include the free courses. Click the link for the free resource. It's going to link you to 3 introductory AI course options that are also free. Everything's free. So the more you learn, the better off you'll be, because I have said on every recent video, I don't know if people have watched far enough into the videos, but every recent video I've said, you are going to have to be able to work with AI at your job within 2 to 3 years. This doesn't mean program. This means the work you do will involve interfacing with AI that somebody else built to do your job. That's guaranteed. It's going to happen. So let's talk about that. We talked about advanced manufacturing just a few minutes ago. Amazon Robotics to build a second U.S. plant in Massachusetts. Now, this is from late last year. Amazon announced it's building a new robotics factory in Westborough, Massachusetts, right outside Boston, to add to its existing robot manufacturing base there. The new factory will add 200 jobs to the area and expand Amazon Robotics' footprint. The new facility will join the existing site in North Reading and focus mainly on producing mobile drive units, robots used to carry pallets around warehouses. So don't think that Amazon isn't thinking about selling or leasing or renting out this technology, because they are. They're going to build all these robots, right? And make them work perfectly in their own warehouses. And then, just like they've done with every other industry, they're going to fully disrupt the logistics management industry internal to warehouses by blasting out their robotics options to everybody. I've said before, if you work in a warehouse, now is the time to start learning something new, because you have several years to do it. Warehouses, not immediately, but 3 years from now, for all the big companies, will be highly automated. And like everything else, once the big companies are at automation with something, then it starts to get cheaper and cheaper. And then it comes down to the medium-sized companies after a few more years, and then last, the smaller companies. But even the smaller companies are going to be impacted by this by 2030. That's what we talk to, is everything between now and 2030. So we got Amazon building a second robotics factory there. Then we have another article courtesy of Wall Street Journal. Companies are turning to robots to fill their labor shortages. So because of the pandemic, there was a huge acceleration of people saying, F it, I'm done. I'm going to retire early, because they were good savers and they could retire early. And now they didn't have to deal with all the face mask wearing and restrictions that have been in place in companies. Many companies are still working remotely to this day, although I expect that to change after the summer substantially. But nevertheless, there's a huge labor shortage, something like 4 million jobs short versus people to fill them right now. Businesses are using software-powered robotic arms to sort clothing and e-commerce parcels, pack bread and industrial supplies, pick electronics, consumer products, and prepare them for delivery. So, Amazon has taken that a step further, because they started with the arms, but now their robots are fully mobile. But these arms are starting to push down to companies smaller than these massive, massive corporations. Um, Robotic picking technology is a niche today in overall warehouse automation market, but growing rapidly. The market is expected to reach 1.35 billion in 2025 from an estimated 137 million in 2021. That, my friends, is exponential growth. We talk about that a lot here. So if there is exponential growth in adoption of robotics, you know it's a matter of time before warehouses are fully automated. The broader warehouse automation market was $36 billion last year. That's why people are doing this. This is big, big money. And there's the more that there's money to be made, the more people are going to jump in on this thing, right? Definitely. You're going to see that. All right. Meat processors have been unable to find enough workers for the past 2 years due to COVID. So they are going to spend $450 million at Tyson to automate their chicken deboning line because they have high, it's a shitty job and they have very, very high turnover in it. So we're pretty much at our limit for today. We got a lot more to talk about. I was going to go into how AI is hitting medical now and go back to energy, solar, and even the high-tech companies, but we'll do that next time. I hope you like this format. We're going to do this. Jobs, click the link below, get your free resource. Or get my book on Amazon. It's a fast read, takes a few minutes to get, dirt cheap, and it only takes a few hours to read the whole book. But it'll lay out exactly what's happening in AI in 10 different industries right now. All this is meant to prepare you for the future. And I have a beta course going. I've got beta participants participating in it now. If you click that link and get the free resource, at the end of that process, you will be offered the chance to take the beta course. I'm getting ready to do version 2 of the beta course. In fact, I'm going to start that this week. So we're here to help you. That's why I'm doing this, is to prepare everyone for a very, very different future than the way it is today. The world by 2030 will be so different from the world of 2020 that it's going to be astounding. So different. So prepare yourself. I'm trying to give you a heads up on all this stuff because it's coming like a train through a tunnel and you don't want to get run over. Thanks so much. Take care, and we'll see you for the live next Sunday, 5 p.m. And in the meantime, I will post a video or short as usual on Wednesday. Thanks a lot. Take care, and we'll see you next time.